So welcome everybody to our team call. My name's Cindy Novitch and I have my husband, Doug Novitch, who is my personal tax preparer on this call. And the reason we want to talk to you guys tonight is just because you have your own business with Juice Plus and Tower Garden. It's really important to do really well with saving your receipts and making the most out of your business. So Doug, why don't you go ahead and take it away? And you have to unmute, if you can. Oops.
There we go. There we go. Thank you, Cindy. And just a follow-up to Cindy's commentary on taxes, I think a real simple phrase is it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. And that's, net of taxes. So the conversation that I'm going to share with you guys is, first of all, qualified by the fact that I'm not a tax professional. And what my goal is really to arm you with a way to document the expenses that you can take advantage of as being a partner within the Juice Plus company, as you would for any kind of small business that you are a part of. So the most important part of sort of documenting and being conscious of the opportunity to deduct expenses, business-related expenses that come from your efforts, your marketing efforts in your Juice Plus business. So, Cindy, I think you shared with everyone a couple of Excel spreadsheets, and it's just really a template that I would encourage you at least to use in the event you ever are audited, and God forbid, and that you would need to have some supporting documentation that summarizes the expenses that you have included in your filing. So the first schedule is Schedule C, and Schedule C, if you're not familiar with it, is the schedule that you would use to offset your income with business-related expenses. So, what this spreadsheet does, it really identifies the important criteria that the government's going to look at in terms of signing off on a qualified expense, and that would be date, which is obviously very important. A description of what the purpose of that business expense was. Was it a lunch with Cindy that you picked up the tab? Was it a ordering some business cards? So I just identify the purpose of the expense, and then the vendor is, who did you buy it from? What was the name of the restaurant? That kind of information. And then what I've done is the vertical columns that follow to the right are categories that you will either see identified on Schedule C, or you can create in Schedule C. So the schedule has some very standard types of expenses, office expense, supplies, advertising, things like that. But you may have an expense that doesn't fit, and there's blanks that you can sort of pencil in as a specific category. And so don't limit yourself to the categories that I've created. If there are categories that are unique to expenses that you incur that you want to summarize, then clearly insert in this Excel spreadsheet a column to cover that. Okay. So
I'm going to show this while you're talking real quick.
Sure.
So there it is. And if you don't have it, we'll get this to you.
Yeah. And so, ideally, if you can be disciplined and, maybe monthly, try to collect your receipts that are business related, maybe write on those receipts, the name of the person you had lunch with, the date, well, the date's probably on the receipt anyway. But that receipt would really be trying to describe the purpose of that event, that lunch, whatever expense that you're going to be using. And then on a monthly basis, sort of collect those receipts and then populate this schedule. It'll make it a lot easier than, you know, grabbing the shoebox full of receipts and doing it all at the end of the year. So I'll leave that up to you guys as to what's best to satisfy your, you know, your personal approach. And the other schedule, Cindy, if you want to grab the next schedule, and the Excel, if you're familiar with Excel, there's 2 worksheets. So that Schedule C is the first one, and then there's a tab for the second one, which is the other opportunity for you to deduct business-related expenses from your taxable income. And that's a form called a home office expense form. And, you know, that schedule gives you a chance, like most of us, we work from home. So you want to take a reasonable approach to identify an area of your house that you typically would use to do your Juice Plus business. So it may be your kitchen, it may be your dining room. So the form will ask you to identify that area that you use from your house in terms of square footage. So if it's your kitchen and it's 200 square feet, you put that number in there. And then what is the square footage of your total house? And if your total house is 2,000 square feet and you're using 200 of it for business, it's your dining room, let's call it, then that percentage, that 10%, if you will, becomes the percentage that you can apply to all of your home expenses. So this schedule that I've shared, and Cindy, you can.
I can't find it, sorry.
Well, all right, but whatever. It would be in that schedule. There'd be a tab on that schedule
Okay,
up at the top, I think. It's identified as home office expense. If you clicked on that, maybe. If not, I can just walk you through it. So this template, I think, is really helpful because it identifies all the expenses that you incur in terms of keeping up your house. That means utilities, cable, your phone, insurance, taxes, real estate taxes, any expense you can think of that goes to sort of maintaining your house should be identified on this schedule. And then you'll populate all these expenses, and then your tax form will apply that 10%, that proportion of your house that's used for business, and that becomes a deductible expense. Now, that's a huge benefit because you're obviously paying for all those expenses to maintain your house, and to be able to take 10% of them, of those expenses, and apply it to reducing your taxable income is a tremendous economic benefit. So if you're not familiar with the benefits of owning a business through these 2 vehicles, Schedule C and home office expenses, this is a real advantage. To get back to, you know, my opening comment, of which is not what you earn, it's what you keep. And if you can reduce your tax liability by what the IRS allows you to do, these are all very legitimate approaches. And that book that Cindy shared goes into much more strategic detail in how you can find ways to use tax deductions, business deductions, to offset your taxable income, to reduce your tax liability, and to put more dollars directly into your pocket. So, which is, I think, should be a goal for all of us. Does anybody have any questions?
And I did pull up that second sheet.
Okay. Probably no questions because you're all extremely talented tax people. Are people familiar with you know, taking advantage of sole proprietorship or, you know, personal businesses as it relates to preparing taxes? So if you are, great. And again, if people are familiar with preparing taxes and taking advantage of your own business, and there are some ideas that any of you have, this would be a great forum to share that with the team.
I do think that it's easier. Like I have envelopes that I do each month, and I put everything from the month in that envelope with like a ledger on the on the front of it, and it makes it easier because to say I'm going to remember, I don't always remember.
Yeah.
But it's an easy way to keep track of everything. So when I'm filing papers away, it's like it goes in that envelope for that month. And then
Yeah.
when that month is done, they just all kind of stack up until I have 12 of them.
Yeah. Thanks, Chandler. Another an idea that I use just to make sure nothing slips through the cracks is that you can be diligent in collecting receipts for business related activities. But I always take the year's worth of credit card statements and just scan them to say, oh yeah, there was that flight that I took that I didn't have a receipt for, or it's that Uber expense that I needed to go from the airport to the conference. So as a good sort of safety net to make, once you've maybe completed your schedule, pour through your credit card statements, every month, and just go through the detail and use a highlighter. It's like, there's a good one. And so that, again, using a highlighter, and then taking that information from that statement and then populating your schedule. And maybe you make a footnote on that, on your detailed schedule that says credit card statement in the event you didn't have the receipt. So you have some documented evidence, again, preparing yourself in the terrible circumstances of having an audit where you can have a trail. And I talk to tax accountants about, audits, and as long as you have reasonable evidence and logic to justify an expense, you're generally okay. The IRS typically in audit wants to make sure that you're not just making stuff up. So if you can use a credit card statement, if you don't have the receipt, that's pretty potent evidence. And if you have like your diary or your calendar on your iPhone that you can turn to and say, on April 15th, I was in Atlanta at a conference and these expenses are related to that. So that becomes sort of your justification for expenses. But I think that, if you're doubtful of an expense, if you don't think that you can support it, don't use it. Because maybe I just take a very conservative approach, but I always sort of pretend that, I'm across the table from an IRS examiner and I've got to explain why my expense is legitimate. And if you can kind of pass that imaginary test, go with it, is my view.
Another thing that I do, it's like sometimes it's hard to keep track of mileage and stuff, but I have this app called Mile IQ, and I use that, and it prints out a log. And when you go through it, you can put if it's personal or if it's business, but it prints out a report that you can actually put in with your paperwork as well.
Yeah, no, that's another good one. There is a section of your tax return that covers, maybe it's a byproduct of Schedule C, or I'm not sure what it is, but personal use of your vehicle. And everybody has their own approach. My approach on that is I identify the number of miles that Cindy's car traveled in a year, and then I apply a percentage for business use. It's not real scientific, but it's, I think this year, I think I used like 30% or something. But again, it's that reasonableness standard. But everybody, has to use their own discretion on, how they want to report, expenses related to your business.
And just on that note and Kelly, you can chime in. I mean, anytime I'm in my car, most of the time I'm on the phone talking to a teammate, a customer, a prospect. So I'm in my car driving and maybe I'm meeting somebody, or maybe I'm just going to Target, but I am using that time in my car. So I think that's legit. You know, we're always on our phones. We're always moving and doing things like that. So yeah, taking advantage of that. And you know, if you get a computer, right, you can write your computer off. You're using that. If you know, upgrade your phone. There's just so many things that you use for your business. I just did a little salad in a jar party, and you know, I went to Trader Joe's and Costco and bought, you know, food for the salads. Like, I'm writing that off because this was a party where we talked about Juice Plus, and I had smoothies. So I wrote off some of my, you know, complete protein powder for the smoothies that we had. So there are a lot of things to write off.
Well, and even my trip to Colorado every year, I write it off, but I always make sure I visit a Terra Garden customer. I'm doing video footage of
Exactly.
it. I'm making posts about it. And I try and do some Terra Garden business every time I go there so that I can write that trip off.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point, Shondaland. That is important. So, you know, if you are making, you know, taking a trip, visiting relatives or whatever, you can find an opportunity either to prospect, or if that relative takes the product, they're a customer. So you can clearly identify a reason to claim your travel expenses, as Shondaland alluded to, for tax deductions.
And you guys will be getting your 1099s, or you can get them in your back office.
I got
So,
mine today.
okay,
Yeah.
nice. So that was good. Yeah,
They're probably already in the office. You can look them up in the office.
they are in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can show you guys that if anyone wants to see it, but it's coming in the mail as well.
Right.
What
It
else?
might be nice to show where to find it, Cindy.
Okay. Yep. Let me jump in there.
And then I was just gonna say that, you know, if you go and you have a meal with anybody and you bring up Juice Plus, either the product or the business, you can write off that meal. So save those receipts and keep track of them. One of the things I like to do is on my day timer, if I pay for an event or I have an expense that is on a card, I'll put it on that day on my calendar and highlight it in like green or orange, so that when I'm going through my statements and I'm trying to think, what was it that I paid $100 on? It's in there on the date. So it just makes it easier to kind of categorize it.
Right.
All right. So here we're in the classic office, for those of you who know what that is, and for Shirley will teach her. So under personal profile, you can see right here, it says my 1099 and then the 1099 breakdown. So I won't click on that because that's Doug's personal information, but if you click on that, it will open up and then you can just print that. So super easy to find. And we use the breakdown one because this one, my 10, it didn't show much. I think.
Well, no. So says Cindy, the 1099 is what's reported to the IRS. Okay. And so those commissions, if you will, I think they identify them as commissions. That's what you'll put into your Schedule C. And obviously that has to match the 1099 because that's what the IRS is receiving from Juice Plus to backstop the amount of money that you earn from the company in that tax year. The breakdown, you know, there's some tax detail in there, and I'm going to leave it to either you or the tax professional that you use to sort of whether or not some of that information you can expand on. They've got some breakdowns in there that I personally don't comprehend. So I keep it very simple in my approach, which is just to identify the 1099 income because that's what the IRS sees. The supplement that I think you got in the mail today, we got in the mail, that just breaks down the detail of the composition of that 1099 reported income. If there's some high level tax people out there that know how to use that detail for your advantage, go with it. But but I've never really found a need to sort of use that detail. Maybe it's just information that you want to use personally, but I have not used it for tax reporting purposes. I just use the 1099.
Anyone else? I mean, Kevin, you've had businesses. Any thoughts on anyone have anything else to add, I guess?
No, I don't have anything else to add right off. Just making sure you keep your receipts.
Right.
Yeah, that's important. And, we've had trips we've done for conference where we've used our points, our airline points.
Good one, Tanner.
So all
Yep.
we're paying is, the tax, which was like $11 for that flight to, Phoenix. Well, that flight costs a lot more. So you can calculate the mileage of what that flight would have cost you and
Yep.
then put that in that way. So if you're using miles, make sure you're giving yourself credit for the full amount.
Right. It's not so much what the flight would have cost you if you didn't use the points. It is a method that allows you to deduct that travel expense. And you can go on your specific airline's website and they'll identify the cents per mile that you can use for that specific airline, what they would have charged with the redemption visa versus the redemption of those points. So I think, for example, we did that, and I think it was Delta Airlines, and I think it was 13 cents per mile. And I'm just going to give you an example. I think it was a trip, it may have been the trip down to Atlanta's conference, and it ended up, the miles times the 13 cents round trip, it ended up being like $463 or something like that, which sounded somewhat reasonable, but it's a way to translate the use of frequent flyer points or miles into a travel expense for tax purposes. Mm-hmm. So thanks for bringing that up, Cindy, because that's a good one. If people are using their frequent flyer benefits for business travel, you certainly want to be able to take advantage of the value, if you will, the economic value of those points as a tax deduction.
Catherine just asked me to ask this question: if you didn't save receipts. But one thing I want to clarify is, some people are newer in the business. So if you just started, you maybe don't need to be doing any of this because you have to have made at least $600 to file the Schedule C. But if you didn't save receipts, you might be able to go in her credit card, in her statements to find things. Or I don't pay for cash with much of anything.
I was going to say, I don't use cash for hardly anything. I use my card for almost everything.
Right.
So there's a way to track it.
Right. Now, there are some people that get a credit card that's exclusively used for their business. So that keeps it really simple. So all the expenses associated with your monthly statement, they're all business expenses, because that's the only reason you would use that card. That's one way of doing it. Ideally, the receipt is what you would want to have, but the next best thing would be identifying it on your statement through a line item, highlight it, and then make note in that statement, if you will, the person that you had lunch with or the purpose of describe it. And if then you could also match it up, as Kelly mentioned, in your calendar or your diary. So again, what you're doing is you're just trying to build the case that the expense that you're using for a deduction is legitimate. And if you can do that through a combination of your bank statement, your credit card statement, your diary, your calendar, all that information, in my opinion, again, I'm not a qualified tax professional, but in my opinion, that's a pretty good story that you should be able to defend.
And another thing is, like, we prepare this, or Doug does, thank God, and then we send it to our accountant, right? So he's doing all of it. In this book, she says, your tax accountant's job is not to itemize all that for you. It is your job to do it. And you can have your tax preparer put it all into the numbers that they need to
Mhm.
prepare a tax file
Mhm.
for. But, and a lot of people do their own taxes, right? So, but just know that, yeah, the shoebox or the baggie that I tend to give to my husband would not go over well with our accountant.
Yeah, and to that
Charge you for
point,
that.
to that point, Cindy, the person that prepares our taxes, when I send my backup, my support from a distance, but I mean, I got like 5 or 6 pages of detailed line items that go into those categories that will populate the tax return. And my tax guy says, this is unbelievable. This is far better than a shoebox. To be able to potentially have to confront an IRS, agent with this level of detail helps legitimize your tracking of your business expenses. And because, I am sure in IRS audit travels, there are people that just make stuff up. And so if you can show a really solid paper trail of the detail that went into each of the numbers that get populated on Schedule C, it'll make you look very good.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking out loud here, but we are, like we said, we're in 26 countries and now we're opening up all these other countries. So dream in your business. Maybe you want to go to Italy like Shirley's going to, and Doug and I are going to in the fall. So you can have a Juice Plus business in Italy. You can write off that trip. So, I don't know, go to LinkedIn, find somebody in Italy that wants to order the product or do the business with you. And then, write off that trip. It's exciting, right? We can go to Israel. Yeah. So I don't know. There's so much excitement that you can do in this business. And, we're lucky, I think, that we have a business that's been around this long and that we just have to be the voice of sharing about health and wellness. And we get the benefits of everything. So,
Does anybody use QuickBooks?
I've used QuickBooks in the past. I'm not currently using it.
Yeah, we used it in the past too, Cindy, I think, a long time ago.
are you using that, Kelly? You're muted.
QuickBooks.
Are you using it?
Does anybody use QuickBooks? Yeah, I do. Yeah,
You use that. Yeah.
I do. And it helps because it downloads each credit card and my checking account. So I can just sit there and log them to, is it going to marketing? Is it going to networking? Is it, sample products? And so, when it's good, each month you get your credit card statement and then you just log in everything to where it's allocated. So I have one credit card that's more specific for business, and then one that's a combination of business and more personal. So some things are logged just to owner and personal expense.
Mhm.
But it just helps to kind of log everything up so it, at the end of the year, it's not crazy trying to get everything done
Right.
for the taxes. And then the checkbook, it automatically downloads. You do pay for QuickBooks, but to keep track of that as the year goes saves a lot of time, and time is money.
Yeah, so Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only burdensome part of that is that you have to take each of your credit card statements and upload all that data. I mean, line by line of your credit card statement, you have to input all that information, don't you?
QuickBook downloads it all. It just links automatically to your account.
Oh, it links to your American Express card, wherever it is.
American, Visa, and my checkbook.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been using it for about 4 years, and you do pay. I think it's $25 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the time that it takes to figure out taxes,
Yeah.
it's been really beneficial.
Okay.
For me, and
Good.
I'm not.
That's awesome. Hey, I'm gonna stop the recording and you guys will get this if you want it. So hang on.